Lift your arm to the side, just like that, and now look at it. Look at what's hanging under your upper arm, that soft tissue that gently sways when you wave. This isn't a beauty problem, it's a message. Andrew Bennett here, and I'm going to tell you something right at the beginning that will surprise you. What's hanging under your arm has almost nothing to do with your weight. Almost nothing. It has to do with four processes running in your body. Silent, slow, invisible, and at least one of them is affecting you right now, in this very moment. What really worries me is that most people think this is normal, a sign of aging, something you just have to live with, and that's exactly the attitude that causes the real problem to remain undetected for months, sometimes years. Because saggy upper arms are not the cause, they are the symptom. Let me put it this way, your arm is telling you something about your blood, about your hormones, about your gut, yes, you heard right, and about something happening in your lymphatic system that almost no doctor talks to you about. Four mechanisms, and for each one, today I'm going to give you a concrete plan. No guesswork, no vague tips, step by step. But first we need to clear something up, because everything you've heard so far about saggy upper arms is, with high probability, wrong. What your doctor usually says and why it's incomplete. When you go to your family doctor with saggy upper arms, almost always the same thing happens. He takes a quick look and says, lose weight and move more. Maybe he suggests light dumbbell exercises. Maybe he tells you to eat less cake, and then you go home and feel guilty. Listen, I've spoken with people for over 30 years who have received exactly that answer, and in the vast majority of cases, it's incomplete. Not wrong, but dangerously incomplete, because it sends you in the wrong direction. Saggy upper arms are not fat that got lost. The skin there is thin, the circulation is low, the muscle is small and reacts faster than any other part of the body to internal disturbances. Your upper arm is like a seismograph. It registers tremors that have their origin elsewhere, and that's exactly why it's so valuable, if you learn to read it. What's actually happening there? Beneath your skin lies the musculus triceps brachii, 3 heads, 1 muscle, covering almost your entire upper arm at the back. This muscle has one peculiarity. You almost never use it at full strength in daily life. You don't use it when carrying, not when gripping, not when lifting. It only works when you actively push something away from you. And that's exactly what you almost never do in daily life. The triceps is one of the first muscles to react to underuse, one of the first to shrink, one of the first to give up. But, and here's the point, that alone doesn't explain what you're seeing. Millions of people are inactive, but not all of them have saggy upper arms. There are people who spend half their lives on the couch and have firm arms. And there are people who work in the garden every day, who hike, who cook, who are active, and still carry that hanging tissue under their arms. Why? Because inactivity prepares the ground. But the collapse comes from somewhere else. And now it gets important, because what's coming next are the 4 real causes, not the obvious ones, not the ones in magazines, the ones that run deep inside your body where you don't look. Each of these 4 mechanisms alone can be enough to make your upper arms hang. And in many people, 2, 3, sometimes all 4 are working at the same time. Because number 1, sarcopenia and insulin resistance. The first thing we need to talk about has a name you've probably never heard, and it affects every human being from a certain age, without exception. Sarcopenia, from the Greek sarx, flesh, and penia, lack, flesh lack. Sounds brutal. It is. Your body is breaking down muscle mass. That's no secret. Almost everyone knows that. But what almost nobody knows is at what age it begins, how fast it happens, and why it's so much worse at the upper arm than anywhere else. Let me give you a number. From age 30, you lose between 3 and 5% of your muscle mass per decade. That sounds like a little. Do the math. At 60, you have 15 to 20% less than at 30. And from age 60, this process accelerates again to up to 8% per decade. That means a 70-year-old on average has a quarter less muscle mass than at 30. A quarter. But sarcopenia is not simply a normal aging process. That's what bothers me. Because most doctors treat it as if it were unavoidable, as if it belonged to aging like gray hair. No, that's not quite right. Gray hair is unavoidable. Sarcopenia is not. It can be accelerated and it can be slowed down. It has drivers, and those drivers you can influence. The most important driver is insulin resistance, and here it gets really interesting. Your muscle needs 2 things to maintain itself, a stimulus and a nutrient. The stimulus comes from movement, the nutrient comes from protein. But, and here's the catch, your muscle can only properly use protein when insulin is working. Insulin isn't just the key for sugar. Insulin also slows muscle breakdown and creates the conditions under which amino acids are built into new tissue inside the muscle cell. When your insulin system is disturbed, when your cells start responding more weakly to insulin, the balance tips. Breakdown outweighs buildup, not dramatically, but steadily, day after day. What happens then? You eat your breakfast, your whole grain bread, your egg, your quark. The amino acids swim in your blood, but they don't arrive where they're needed. Your muscle starves in the middle of abundance. And the triceps, This quiet, forgotten muscle that's barely challenged anyway is one of the first to feel the consequences. How do you know if this is happening to you? There's a simple sign. Look at your belly. No, not at the scale. At your belly. If you carry fat mainly around the middle, belly fat, visceral fat, then the probability is high that your insulin system is under pressure. Belly fat and insulin resistance almost always go together. And when insulin resistance can no longer supply your muscles, you see it first in the arms, then in the thighs, then in the back. And what's insidious, you don't notice it in your strength. You notice it in volume. Your arm becomes softer, not weaker. You can still carry the same bag, open the same bottle, push open the same door. But beneath your skin, the tissue that supports this arm from within is shrinking. And one day, suddenly, or so it feels, something is hanging there that wasn't there before. It wasn't sudden. It was years. You just hadn't seen it. Sarcopenia isn't a diagnosis you get. It's a process running in you, in me, in everyone. The only question is, how fast? And the answer depends directly on what your insulin is doing. And now it becomes a cycle, a vicious cycle if you don't intervene. Listen carefully. Less muscle mass means less glucose consumption. Your muscle is the largest organ in your body that takes up sugar. When the muscle shrinks, your body needs less sugar, but you keep eating like before. Where does the excess sugar go? Into fat cells, around the belly. And this fat produces inflammatory substances. These inflammatory substances make your cells even more resistant to insulin, and more resistant cells mean even less nutrient arriving in the muscle. The muscle shrinks further, the sugar rises further, the fat grows further. Less muscle, more fat, less insulin action. Less muscle, more fat, less insulin action. It spins and it accelerates. And your upper arm shows you this first. Long before your blood sugar becomes noticeable, long before your doctor makes any diagnosis. The arm is the early warning system, if you look. If you just recognized yourself, save this video. What's coming next is even more important. Because number 2, cortisol. Wartra and D the silent muscle eater. Because the insulin cycle is only the beginning. There's a second force acting on your muscles. A force that has nothing to do with food, nothing to do with movement, nothing to do with your weight. A force that comes directly from your head, from your everyday life, from your nights. And this force is possibly more dangerous than anything we've discussed so far. Because you can't feel it. Because it's there even when you feel relaxed. And because it doesn't just affect your arms, it eats up your entire body from within. Cortisol, the stress hormone. You've probably heard the name 100 times, but you've never heard what it does to your upper arms. And that's exactly what I'm going to explain to you now. Cortisol is not a bad hormone. Let me rephrase that. Cortisol is a survival hormone. It's released when your body thinks danger is coming. It makes you alert, fast, focused. It mobilizes energy. It was designed so that in a dangerous situation, you can give everything for 5, 10, 20 minutes. And afterward, it was supposed to sink again, back to a baseline. Rest. The problem is, your body doesn't know the difference between a real attack and an argument with the neighbor, an unpaid bill, a phone call that upsets you, or a night when you lie awake thinking about tomorrow. For your hormonal system, all of that is the same, alarm. And when the alarm doesn't stop, day after day, week after week, then cortisol stays up, permanently. And here something happens that hardly anyone understands. Cortisol mobilizes energy, but from where? Not from fat, not immediately. Cortisol gets energy from the fastest storage your body has, from muscle. It breaks down muscle protein and converts it into glucose. This is called gluconeogenesis. Your body makes sugar out of muscle. This is vital in an acute crisis. But when it happens chronically, cortisol eats your muscles, literally, fiber by fiber. And guess which muscle is affected first? Exactly. The triceps, this small, quiet, underused muscle that you barely use in daily life. Your body prioritizes. It protects the muscles you need. Legs for walking, back for standing, heart for pumping. The triceps, expendable. It's sacrificed, quietly. Now comes the second blow. The cortisol that breaks down your muscles simultaneously ensures that the released material, the sugar, is stored again. And where? In fat. And not evenly everywhere. Cortisol has a preference for the body's center. Belly, neck, trunk. That's where fat grows. And at the upper arm, the opposite happens. There, the muscle decreases, but the subcutaneous fat tissue stays. The supporting tissue shrinks. The soft tissue above it loses its hold and begins to hang. It's not that new fat forms there. It's that the muscle underneath disappears, and what remains falls down. The result looks the same, but the mechanism is different from what most people think. Wait, how do you know if cortisol is a problem for you? Ask yourself 3 things. First, do you sleep through? Not whether you're tired. That's something else. Do you sleep through without waking up between 2 and 4 in the morning? Because it's exactly in this window that cortisol should reach its low point. If you regularly wake up in this time, that's a hint that your cortisol isn't falling as it should. Second, how long do you need in the morning to wake up? A healthy cortisol rhythm gives you a natural morning boost, the so-called cortisol awakening response. You wake up, and within 30 minutes you're clear. If you need an hour, 3 cups of filter coffee before you function, then your rhythm is disturbed. Third, do you have phases during the day where you're irritable for no reason? Not angry, irritable, thin-skinned. The feeling that everything is too much, though objectively nothing bad has happened. That's not character, that's cortisol. If 2 or 3 of these points apply to you, then look at your upper arms. Then what you see there possibly has nothing to do with your eating habits, and everything to do with your nervous system. I'll say this calmly. Chronic cortisol excess destroys muscle faster than inactivity, faster than bad nutrition, faster than anything else we've discussed so far. And it does it invisibly. Your weight on the scale can stay stable. Your doctor won't pull anything, but under your skin, the ratio of muscle to fat is shifting month after month, year after year, until one day you look in the mirror and ask yourself, when did that happen? And there's a time when this happens especially fast, at night. Your body repairs itself in sleep, you know that. But what you may not know is that muscle repair happens mainly in the deep sleep phases, and exactly these phases are shortened or completely suppressed by elevated cortisol. It's a double loss. During the day, cortisol breaks down your muscles. At night, it prevents them from being repaired. Breakdown and blocked repair at the same time. That's the reason why people with chronic stress lose muscle so much faster than people who sleep well. Not a little faster, drastically faster. Clinical studies have measured this. People who slept less than 6 hours per night over weeks and months lost significantly more muscle mass than the comparison group, with the same nutrition and the same activity. And since the triceps is barely used anyway, this loss hits it especially hard. It has no daily strain to protect it. And here the circle closes back to insulin, because lack of sleep worsens insulin sensitivity. Even just a few nights with 5 hours of sleep are enough to worsen your insulin response, in some studies by 20 to 40%. That means your muscle gets even less nutrient. The breakdown accelerates further. Cortisol, sleep, insulin. 3 gears that mesh into each other. When one jams, the others pull along, and your upper arm shows you that something is jamming, if you look. 'Cause number 3, the lymphatic system. What doctors miss. Now I come to something that most doctors don't have on their radar. And I don't say that lightly. I say it because I've watched for 30 years how this diagnosis has been overlooked, dismissed, and ignored. The lymphatic system. If someone you love is ignoring these symptoms, share this video with them. Sometimes a stranger's voice lands better than your own. Your bloodstream has a partner, a quiet, invisible partner that no one talks about, the lymphatic system. It's a network of fine vessels running through your entire body, parallel to the blood vessels. And its job is simple but vital. It collects fluid that seeps out of your blood into the tissue, filters it, and leads it back. Every day, your lymphatic system moves 2 to 3 liters of fluid through your body, without a pump, without a motor. It has no heart driving it. It only moves when you move. That's the point. When your lymphatic system slows down, and there are dozens of reasons why that can happen, then fluid backs up in the tissue, not water you can see, not the kind of swelling you notice when you sprain your ankle, but a quiet, creeping accumulation of protein-rich fluid in the subcutaneous tissue. And this fluid changes the tissue. It makes it soft, heavy, spongy. And it collects preferentially where gravity helps, and the lymph vessels are thinnest, on the inside and back of your upper arms. Why exactly there? Because the lymph vessels of the arms run from the fingertips up to the axillary lymph nodes against gravity. And the less you move your arms, the less muscle contractions support this flow, the slower the lymph flows. It backs up. And the buildup doesn't begin at the hands, not at the fingers. It begins at the upper arm, there, where the vessels come closest together and gravity pulls hardest downward. Now comes the part that really worries me. There's a disease that affects millions of women worldwide, and in most, it's never diagnosed. It's called lipedema, and before you say that sounds like something strange, exotic, no. It affects, according to current estimates, up to 11% of all women. 11%. That means in a group of 10 women, at least one is sitting there who has it and doesn't know. Lipedema is a chronic fat distribution disorder in which pathologically altered fat cells accumulate in certain body regions, preferentially at the legs, but also at the upper arms. And this fat doesn't respond to diets. It doesn't respond to exercise. You can bring your body weight to ideal measure. You can walk 1 hour every day. This tissue on your upper arms doesn't change. And you know what most affected people are told? Lose weight, move more, eat less. The same answer as with sarcopenia. The same answer that solves nothing, because the problem is different. How do you distinguish lipedema from normal overweight at the arms? 3 characteristics. First, symmetry. Lipedema always affects both sides equally. If one arm is significantly thicker than the other, it's probably not lipedema. Second, pressure sensitivity. Normal fat tissue doesn't hurt when you press it. Lipedema tissue hurts. Grab your upper arm. Press firmly. If you feel pain that doesn't come from a bruise, then pay attention. Third, tendency to bruise. Do you get bruises easily on your arms, seemingly without reason, without having bumped into anything? That's another sign. I don't want to give you a diagnosis. I can't, and it would be wrong. But I want you to know this possibility exists, because the average time to diagnosis for lipedema in German-speaking countries is over 10 years. Over 10 years, in which women are ashamed, torment themselves, do diets that bring nothing, and ask themselves what they're doing wrong. Nothing. They're doing nothing wrong. Their body just functions differently. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, what's hanging under your upper arm is not weakness, not guilt, but a disease that has a name and can be treated. Do something for me now. Reach with your right hand to the inside of your left upper arm. Press gently, and now let go and observe. If you press a dent with your thumb, do you stay there for a second, 2 seconds, and see an indentation? Does the skin spring back immediately, or does the dent stay for a moment? If the dent stays even just 2 seconds, that's a hint of fluid in the tissue. Medically, this is called pitting edema. It means your lymphatic system in this area isn't transporting the fluid away fast enough. It's not proof. It's not a substitute for a medical examination, but it's a hint. A hint you should take seriously. Second test. Squeeze your upper arm tissue with 2 fingers, not the skin, the tissue underneath. Does it feel grainy, like sand under the skin? Like small soft nodules? That's fibrotic tissue. Tissue that has changed through chronic lymph stasis. Healthy fat tissue feels smooth. Altered tissue feels grainy. If both apply, the dent stays and the tissue feels grainy, then speak with your doctor. Not with the request for a diet, but with the concrete question, could this be lymphedema or lipedema? And don't let yourself be brushed off. Because most doctors, and I say this with respect but also with honesty, are not well trained in the diagnosis of lymphedema and lipedema. It's a blind spot in the system. If your doctor waves it off, find a doctor for phlebology or lymphology. They exist. They're rare, but they exist. Because number 4, the silent saboteur in your gut. And now we come to the 4th cause, and this one is perhaps the most treacherous of all, because it begins where you'd least suspect it, in your gut. What you eat does not determine what your body gets. That's the point most people overlook. You can eat your egg every morning, your quark, your whole grain bread with cheese. You can consume the perfect amount of protein, and still your muscle can starve, because eating and absorbing are 2 completely different things. Let me explain. Protein is not absorbed as a whole. It has to be broken down first. In your stomach, the process begins with hydrochloric acid and an enzyme called pepsin. They break the long protein chains into shorter pieces. Then it goes on into the small intestine, where pancreatic enzymes, trypsin, chymotrypsin, break these pieces into individual amino acids. And only these individual amino acids can pass through the intestinal wall into your blood, and from there be transported to your muscles. If anywhere in this chain something doesn't work, too little stomach acid, too few pancreatic enzymes, an inflamed intestinal mucosa, then not enough amino acids arrive. Your muscle doesn't get the raw material it needs to maintain itself. And it shrinks, not because you eat too little, but because your body can't process what you give it. Actually, let me correct that. Your body does process it, but it processes it wrong. Instead of absorbing amino acids, the incompletely broken down proteins ferment in your gut. That produces gases, bloating, a feeling of heaviness after eating, and it feeds the wrong bacteria in your gut. Putrefactive bacteria that produce substances that further damage your intestinal mucosa. A cycle that worsens itself. How do you know if this is happening to you? Bloating after protein-rich meals. Not after cabbage, not after beans, after meat, after eggs, after dairy products. That's an important distinguishing feature. If your stomach is bloated after a piece of beef the way it would be after a portion of sauerkraut, that's a sign your body isn't handling the protein. Brittle fingernails. Your nails are made of keratin, a protein. If your body isn't absorbing enough amino acids, you see it in your nails. They splinter, they bend. They have white spots or ridges. Slow wound healing. Your body needs amino acids to repair tissue. If a small cut on your finger needs a week instead of 3 days, that's a sign. Hair loss. Diffuse, even hair loss that doesn't concentrate on a specific spot. Hair is made of protein. When supply becomes scarce, your body saves on non-vital structures, and hair belongs to that. Now connect these dots. Saggy upper arms, brittle nails, thin hair, bloating after eating, slow healing. These aren't 5 different problems. This is one problem with 5 faces. Forward this video before you forget. Sometimes a single link does more than 10 doctor visits. What many don't know, stomach acid production decreases with age. From age 50, at many people, the stomach produces noticeably less hydrochloric acid. Estimates range from 15 to 40% less than at age 30. And certain medications, acid blockers, proton pump inhibitors that millions of people take daily, reduce acid production even further, on purpose. That's their purpose. But as a side effect, protein digestion suffers massively. I'm not telling you this so you stop your medications. Never. Speak with your doctor about the possibility of adjusting dosage or discussing alternatives. But know what these medications do to your protein absorption, because your doctor will rarely explain this to you on his own. And here it goes one layer deeper. Your gut has a surface area of 30 to 40 square meters. That's as big as a small apartment. This surface is covered with villi, tiny finger-shaped protrusions that absorb nutrients from the food pulp. And these villi can be damaged by inflammation, by food intolerances, by chronic stress, yes, there it is again, stress, and by a disturbed gut flora. When the villi are damaged, absorption capacity drops, not dramatically, not overnight, but creeping. A little less this year, a little less next year, and at some point, absorption isn't enough anymore to guarantee muscle maintenance. What especially bothers me here is the invisibility of the whole thing. You go to the doctor, get a blood panel, your total protein is normal, your albumin is normal, so your doctor says everything is fine. But what he doesn't measure, and what he normally can't measure, is how much of the protein swimming in your blood actually arrives in the muscle cells. And that's exactly where the problem lies. There's an examination you can have done, an amino acid profile. It's a blood test that doesn't measure total protein, but the individual amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, valine, the branched chain amino acids, especially important for muscle building. If these values are low, even though you eat enough protein, then you have an absorption problem. Then your gut is the bottleneck. That's the point. Not your eating behavior, not your age, not your genes, your gut. An organ you'd think of last with saggy upper arms, and perhaps the one that should be treated first. The plan: 4 causes, 1 system, 4 causes, 4 mechanisms. Sarcopenia through insulin resistance, muscle breakdown through cortisol, lymph stasis, and lipedema. Protein malabsorption through the gut, 4 ways in which your body is sending you a message through your upper arms. And now comes what you've been waiting for, the plan. I'm not going to give you advice you follow for 3 weeks and then forget. I'm going to give you a system, small, doable, effective. And I'll start where most people get it wrong. Movement, but not the kind you think. If you have saggy upper arms and someone tells you to do triceps exercises, that makes sense at first glance. Train the muscle grows, arm becomes firmer. Logical. But wrong. No, not wrong. Incomplete. Because isolated triceps exercises only address the surface. They give the muscle a stimulus, yes. But if the problem lies deeper, insulin resistance, cortisol, lymph stasis, malabsorption, then you're training against a wall. The muscle gets the stimulus but not the nutrient. Or it's broken down again at night. Or the fluid in the tissue overlays every training success. That's why movement has to look different. 3 levels. Level 1. Full body movement for insulin sensitivity. The goal is not to isolate the triceps. The goal is to activate the largest muscle of your body, the thigh. Because the more muscle mass you activate overall, the more glucose your muscles consume, the better your insulin sensitivity becomes, the more nutrients arrive everywhere, including in the triceps. Concretely, 30 minutes of walking per day, every day, not 3 times a week, every day, and not leisurely strolling. Walk briskly so that you can still talk but no longer sing. This intensity is enough to measurably improve insulin sensitivity within 2 weeks. 2 weeks, that's not theory, that's clinically documented. Level 2, resistance work for the arms, not in a gym, at home, every other day. 3 exercises you can do with 2 water bottles or a bag with books. First exercise, stand at a wall, hands at shoulder height against the wall. Push yourself away. That's a wall push-up. It loads the triceps without overloading the shoulder. 12 repetitions, 3 sets. Second exercise, take a water bottle. Lift it with a stretched arm over your head. Bend the arm behind your head and stretch it again. 10 repetitions per side, 3 sets. Third exercise, sit on a stable chair, hands next to your hips on the seat. Slide with your bottom off the edge and push yourself up and down. 8 repetitions, 3 sets. That's 20 minutes, every other day. And the effect doesn't show in days, but in weeks. But it shows reliably. Level 3, lymph activation. And this is the level almost nobody knows. Your lymphatic system needs movement, but it needs a certain kind of movement, rhythmic, gentle, recurring contraction. The most effective method for this is simple. Arm circling. Stand upright, stretch both arms to the side, make small circles. 30 seconds forward, 30 seconds backward, morning and evening. This stimulates the lymph flow in the arms directly and immediately. You will notice after 2 weeks that your arms feel lighter, not thinner, lighter, and that's the difference. Nutrition, not less. Just different now to nutrition. And I'll tell you in advance, it's not about eating less. It's about eating differently so that your body gets what it needs and can also absorb it. Listen closely. Protein. The recommendation you probably know is 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, 80 kilograms, 64 grams of protein per day. This recommendation is enough for a 30-year-old with perfect digestion. For a person over 60 with age-related reduced stomach acid, possibly restricted gut function, and cortisol load, it's not enough. Scientists recommend for this age group 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram. That's at 80 kilograms, 96 to 120 grams, almost twice as much. And now comes the important part, not all at once. Your body can only use a limited amount of amino acids per meal for muscle building, about 30 to 40 grams of protein. Anything above that isn't used for the muscle, but burned for energy or converted. That means if you eat a large portion of meat in the evening and just a roll with jam in the morning, you're wasting half of it. Distribution across the day is decisive. 3 meals, each with 30 to 40 grams of protein. Morning, oatmeal with quark and an egg. Midday, a portion with meat or legumes. Evening, potatoes with herb quark or bread with cheese and a boiled egg. And now the part that concerns your gut. If you have bloating after protein, and you remember that was a sign of malabsorption, then there are 3 measures that can help immediately. First, eat slowly. Sounds banal, it isn't. Chewing is the first step of protein digestion. The better you chew, the smaller the pieces arriving in your stomach. The less acid it needs, the better breakdown works. 30 chews per bite is the recommendation that's been standard in gastroenterology for decades. 30 times. Count it at your next lunch. You'll be amazed how little you normally chew. Second, bitter substance foods before eating. Arugula, chicory, dandelion salad, 15 minutes before the meal, as a small salad or a few leaves. Bitter substances stimulate the production of stomach acid and digestive enzymes. That's not alternative medicine, that's physiology. Bitter substances activate the bitter receptors on the tongue, which through the vagus nerve stimulate the secretion glands in the stomach. Measurable, reproducible, documented. Third, fermented foods, sauerkraut, not the pasteurized kind from a can, but fresh raw sauerkraut from the refrigerator, kefir, natural yogurt. These foods deliver lactic acid bacteria that support your gut flora and strengthen the mucosa. 2 to 3 tablespoons of sauerkraut per day are enough, every day, not once a week. The regularity is more important than the amount. A tap on thumbs up, and someone who goes to bed tonight without this knowledge will have it tomorrow. And then there's the question I'm asked most often. Should I take protein powder? My answer, only if you can't manage it through normal nutrition. And if yes, then no whey protein, but a fermented protein or an amino acid preparation already broken down into its parts. Because if your problem is the breakdown, then a powder that has to be broken down first won't help you. Speak with your doctor about the possibility of having an amino acid profile measured in the blood. That gives you clarity. Regulate cortisol. Sleep is your weapon. And now the third building block, the one everyone underestimates, and the one that's perhaps the most important. Regulating cortisol. And before you think I'm now going to talk about meditation and breathing exercises, no. I'm going to talk about sleep, because sleep is the strongest weapon you have against chronically elevated cortisol. No supplement, no tea, no walk in the forest. Sleep. And it's not the amount, it's the quality. You don't need 9 hours. You need 6 to 8 hours with sufficient deep sleep phases. And for that, there are concrete measures. No screens 1 hour before sleeping. Not 30 minutes, 1 hour. The blue light from phones and tablets suppresses melatonin production and shifts your sleep rhythm on average 36 minutes later. What do you do instead? Read a book, a real printed book, or listen to something on the radio, or just sit there and drink an herbal tea. Your brain needs this transition. Fixed bedtime every day, including on weekends. Your cortisol rhythm is a rhythm. It lives from regularity. If you go to bed during the week at 11 p.m. and on the weekend at 1 a.m., then you disturb this rhythm every time. It's like jet lag without traveling. Keep the bedroom cool, 16 to 18 degrees Celsius, about 61 to 65 Fahrenheit. Your body must lower its core temperature to fall into deep sleep. In a warm room, that doesn't succeed. You fall asleep, but you don't sleep deeply. And exactly the deep sleep phases are the ones in which your body releases growth hormone, the hormone that repairs and maintains your muscles. And then there's a point often overlooked, caffeine. Filter coffee in the morning, no problem. But caffeine after 2 p.m. is, for people over 50, a real problem. The half-life of caffeine is 5 to 6 hours. That means a cup of coffee at 3 p.m. still has half its effect at 9 p.m. You may fall asleep, but your cortisol stays up, and your deep sleep suffers, and your muscle doesn't get its repair. An herbal tea in the afternoon instead of a cup of coffee. That sounds small. It isn't. It's one of the most effective interventions you can make. And on the topic of stress reduction, I'll say just one thing. 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes in which you do nothing. No task, no conversation, no screen. Sit down. Breathe. Let your nervous system come to rest. Not because it's esoteric, but because it measurably lowers your cortisol. Several studies have shown that daily rest phases over several weeks can lower cortisol values in saliva by 15 to 25%. That sounds like little, but it's an effect some medications don't reach. What to ask your doctor. And finally, what you do and psych, what you should tell your doctor, because you need your doctor, not instead of this video. In addition, that's the point. Go to your family doctor and ask for 3 examinations, not sometime, in the next 2 weeks. First, fasting blood sugar and HbA1c. The fasting blood sugar shows you how your sugar was this morning. The HbA1c shows you the average of the last 3 months. If your fasting blood sugar is over 100 milligrams per deciliter, or your HbA1c is over 5.7%, then you have insulin resistance that should be treated. That's the prerequisite for your muscles to absorb nutrients again at all. Without a functioning insulin response, every nutritional change is only half as effective. Second, cortisol in saliva, not in blood, in saliva. Because the saliva test shows you the free, biologically active cortisol, while the blood test also measures the bound cortisol that has no effect. The test is ideally performed 4 times a day, morning, midday, afternoon, evening, to see the daily profile. If your cortisol in the evening is not clearly lower than in the morning, then your rhythm is disturbed, and then you know cortisol is involved in your muscle breakdown. Third, a large blood panel with amino acid profile, vitamin D, vitamin B12, and ferritin. Vitamin D is involved in muscle protein synthesis. A vitamin D level under 30 nanograms per milliliter, and that affects in German-speaking countries, depending on the season, up to 60% of the population, can significantly restrict your muscle's ability to regenerate. B12 is essential for the nerve function that steers the muscle. Ferritin shows you your iron stores, and iron is needed to transport oxygen into the muscle. These 3 examinations cost little time, are uncomplicated, and give you a picture that changes everything. You then know not only what's hanging under your upper arm, you know why, and you know where to start. And if there's suspicion of lipedema, ask for a referral to a phlebotomist. That's not luxury, that's a right. An ultrasound examination of the subcutaneous tissue can clarify within 20 minutes whether there's a pathological fat tissue increase. 20 minutes for an answer many people wait over a decade for. The message your body is sending you, and now let me bring it all together, because that's what I really want to give you. Saggy upper arms are not a problem with one cause. They are a junction point, a place where 4 different systems become visible. Muscle metabolism, hormonal system, lymphatic system, gut function. And that's what makes them so special. Because they don't tell you, you're too fat. They tell you, look more closely. Your body isn't a car, but it has a warning system that works better than any dashboard light. The upper arm is one of these lights, and today you learned to read it. Insulin that no longer works properly. The muscle starves in abundance. Cortisol that stays chronically up. The muscle is sacrificed for short-term energy you don't even need. Lymph that backs up, the tissue quietly swells, day by day. And a gut that doesn't absorb what you give it. The silent saboteur no one suspects. And what's remarkable, the measures overlap. A daily walk improves insulin sensitivity and lowers cortisol. Better sleep lowers cortisol and increases growth hormone. Fermented foods strengthen the gut and improve protein absorption. Arm circling activates the lymph and gives the triceps a light stimulus. It's not a system with 20 knobs. It's 5 or 6 simple things that work simultaneously on all 4 causes, and that's what makes it doable. You don't have to change everything at once. Start with one. Start with the walk, or with sleep, or with quark in the morning, but start. And then after 2 weeks, add the next one. Not out of discipline, out of understanding, because now you know why it works. I want to tell you one more thing that has nothing to do with medicine, and at the same time, everything. Saggy upper arms cause many people shame, especially women, but also men. They wear long sleeves in summer. They don't raise their arms anymore. They avoid certain clothing, certain gestures, certain situations, and this shame eats energy they'd need elsewhere. I'll say this to you calmly. Stop being ashamed of it, not because it doesn't matter, but because shame paralyzes. And paralysis is the last thing you need now. What you need is curiosity, the attitude, what is my body telling me? Not what's wrong with me, but what's happening in me, and what can I do? That's a difference that changes everything. Your body isn't sending you a punishment, it's sending you information, and you learn today to decode this information. That's more than most people will ever do. So tomorrow morning, look in the mirror, lift your arm, and instead of looking away, look and tell yourself, I know now what this is, and I know what I can do. That's not a defect, that's a signal. and I've started listening to it. That's worth more than any cream, any miracle cure, any operation. Understanding, concrete, deep understanding of what's happening in your body. That's what moves you forward. Lift your arm to the side, just like that. And now look, do you see it differently? Do you see it now not as a beauty problem, but as what it is? A message from your body telling you where to look. Your insulin system, your cortisol rhythm, your lymph flow, your gut. 4 systems, 4 knobs, and 1 arm that shows you whether you're taking care. I've spoken long today, longer than usual, because this topic is important to me, because I've seen too many people who are ashamed instead of acting, who feel guilty instead of understanding. You understood today. That's the first step. The next lies with you. Tomorrow morning, walk. 30 minutes, and a breakfast with protein. That's all I want from you, not more. Just that. And then look again in 2 weeks. I keep telling you what others prefer to keep silent if you keep listening. Until next time.